Hey Annabelle, how you doing today? Good to see you.
Uh, Good to see you, Kayo. I'm really good, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. How's your day been so far?
It's been really good. The sun is shining. I don't know if it is where you are, but the sun is actually shining here, despite there was snow last night. And I had a beautiful ramen for lunch, so I'm good. I'm really good, thanks.
Yeah, we got a little bit of sunshine cracking through the cold weather, so like, I can't complain too much. Yeah, so
Good.
let the viewers know who you are, what you do, and why you do it, Annabelle.
Yeah, okay. So I am Annabelle. I'm a relationship and communication coach and founder of Coequal Coaching. I do it because I'm passionate about relationships and the way that people communicate with each other. That is at the highlight of that's the real heart of my practice. It's about helping people to have more loving relationships and fostering that through the importance of communicating well and positively and effectively is really, really important to me.
Excellent. So when you look back at your journey up until the point where you decided you wanted to get into a relationship coaching, what was it like for you, the process of like when you're looking at like the fundamentals of the reasons why you wanted to do what you do and what you were going through at the time when you decided to embark on that journey?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Kay, actually. Thank you. So I think I always had a calling that I wanted to be someone that wanted to help people, like that's the heart and soul of what I do is I really want to help people. So I had no idea at 18 what to do with my life. So I went to university and I studied psychology. That was my undergraduate degree and I really enjoyed it and I found a real passion for people. So I think that's where it started. And then I finished university, and like most graduates in a recession, they were like, oh, I don't know what to do now. There's no jobs available. So I went off and did various other work and then became a mum. And I focused a lot on parenting for a long period of time and doing various different jobs. And it was only in, what was it, 2018, after a relationship breakdown with my son's father that I realized that I really was missing out on doing what I believed was my calling, and that was to help people. So I always thought, oh, well, I'll go into counseling. I didn't really know what coaching was because coaching is kind of for C-suite executives or sports, right? Um, so I went back to university and I trained and did my master's degree in applied positive psychology and coaching psychology. And again, a lot of that was focused around like performance and C-suite executives and organizational flourishing. But I was like, whoa, hang on a minute, this isn't quite me. Like something wasn't quite right. I kind of leaned more into the positive psychology, but really it was the relationships. It was like, how can I really make a difference in relationships in people, because that's like the cornerstone of everything, I think, for me.
Excellent. Now, like we all have like different struggles when it comes to relationships, and we navigate through those struggles to get to where we are now. So you did mention you had a relationship breakdown with your baby's father at the time. What was like going on in that period of time for you, and like how did you navigate through that period to get to where you are now?
Mm. It's a really interesting question, isn't it? Because people react so differently to separation. Um, I think for me, it's been a really, really long journey of understanding what healthy love is. And I am married now. I got married in the summer, which was lovely. And I finally started to realize what healthy love was from this relationship. I think everyone goes through different levels of big T, small T trauma through their lives, don't they? And I think a lot of mine was around relationships, initially within my family system. So there's lots of issues there with insecure attachment, um, emotional neglect, so maybe growing up, and the communication patterns were never quite right. There was always this weird communication that always seemed a bit off, or lots of dismissing or invalidation, things like that. And these are things that kind of slip away unconsciously, because they're not like the the big traumas that rock your whole very fundamental being, right? So for me, it was following this separation period was such a massive growth of my own personal well-being journey, and it allowed me to reconnect with what I valued. Like I got lost in my relationships. Like this was my second long-term relationship that failed because communication wasn't there. You know, we weren't supporting each other's well-being. There was abusive patterns that I didn't recognize at the time. And so coming out of that, a lot of people feel despair or they feel sadness. Whereas for me, coming out of that relationship was just a huge amount of relief. It was like a weight had been lifted off of my shoulders, because actually I disconnected emotionally from that relationship 3 years before it ended, you know. But as a, I guess it's as a woman, I don't know, there was this like 3 year internal conflict of like, you can't break up your family. Like, how dare you break up your family? Like, you're meant to hold all this together. So there was all this like societal, I guess, expectation that we carry. And again, that it stifles voice, it stifles communication. And I think that's where a lot of my passion has come from. So I found my course. I'd been searching for about 3 years. I'd gone down various different avenues, whether it was like spirituality, mindfulness, self-compassion, like all of these things that I looked into, and I sort of stumbled across this master's degree and 5 days later applied for it and was like, nope, this is it. This is the one. It incorporates everything that I wanted. And I did that, and it really put a fire in my belly around coaching rather than counseling people, because of the focus being on what works well, what can we do right, how can we move things forwards, because people have all these trauma in their lives, like most of us carry it, right? And we can spend years and years and years doing the work through therapy and counseling, and it is a really useful tool. But when you come through that and you've done all that work, then you can turn to something like coaching and work forwards rather than continuing to look back into the past at the problems. We can start looking forward to the solutions and the flourishing and how we can grow in our relationships.
Right. Yeah. You know, it is commonly said that women tend to leave a relationship long before they actually leave the relationship. So you mentioned like it was 3 years that you had already checked out of the relationship before you actually left it. And you said a lot about the communication or the lack of communication in that relationship. So when you then embarked on your new relationship, that you said there was a lot of love and it was what you was looking for, obviously there was better communication in that aspect. So what would you say were the main aspects of the communication that was better in the new relationship that was missing in the previous relationship?
Yeah, again, super great question. Thank you. I think coming forward into the new relationship, there was, I don't know, we have this joke between us. He's like, well, your bar is so low, Anabel, that I could do anything and it would be amazing, you know. But it was like I wasn't being dismissed anymore. Like my emotions and my feelings and what I was saying were being heard and validated. That was a real difference from previous relationships and my family system, where emotions didn't matter, you know. Oh, it'll be fine, it'll get it, that toxic positivity environment of oh, it's all fine, it's fine. Or, you know, even gaslighting through the whole way. It's like, you're crazy, that's not true, you didn't say that, I didn't say that. All of these different things. But I think the biggest one was always contempt. Like I always feel like there's a real triggering in me when people like roll their eyes, you know. It's that like, oh, it's that judgment and that contempt that people have that was really present previously through my whole relational system. Whereas now coming into this new relationship, it's just like, it happens, right? It still happens. These communication patterns, it happens because we're human, and sometimes we make judgments. But the difference being is I feel safe enough in myself and in my relationship to call it out. And I'll turn and I'll be like, whoa, hey, don't you roll your eyes? Let's have a conversation about it. Whereas before I wouldn't dare do that, because if I did that, that would be a whole massive drama. It'd be a huge conflict. It would be someone storming out. There'd be fights. It would, no one was hearing each other or listening or even making an effort to try and make it work. You know, I have this theory that they talk about like the 3 year thing and then the 7 year itch or whatever it is where people leave. And for me, it's worked very true. And I joke to my husband all the time. I just like, you've got another like 3 years. But I think there's something in it. And I think you get to around 2 years, between 2 and 3 years in a relationship. I think it's a really pivotal moment in your relationship. And this hasn't been different in this relationship for me. This has been the same journey, just coped with differently and worked through differently. So I think between 2 and 3 years, couples have to learn to recognize the way they communicate and understand each other's needs and how they can be met. And if you can't do those, I think that's the pivotal moment in most relationships where people start to grow apart. If you can learn how to communicate with your partner properly and effectively and positively, and learn what their needs are and how you can meet them, instilled in a whole lot of self-awareness and growth, I think that is where you get to about 3 years and something switches and then you start to grow together rather than grow apart. I can't speak for everyone. I haven't done that research, but that's certainly been my experience. After about 3 years in a relationship, I either think that I'm bored or things start to go wrong, or that a lot of silence happens, or I feel scared to speak up. That's been my experiences to date. But that's very much changed in this relationship because of that environment of fostering safety to be able to say what you need to say without it necessarily escalating to a level or blame or defensiveness or all of those things come into such a level that it's unmanageable. And then, because what happens then when you've got unmanageable conflict is that one party goes silent and then they stop communicating. And that might feel like that's, oh, problem solved, you know, that's worked, it's fine. But no, that's when one party starts to check out of that relationship. It's like silent quitting your job, right? You go to an organization and your manager gets on at you, micromanages you to the point where you shut up and get on with your job. And they think, oh, I've done a great job. They're doing what they're meant to do. But that's just not the truth. They've silently quit their job and you're never going to get optimal performance out of that employee. And it's the same in your relationships. You know, you want relationships that flourish, where you can put your whole self into them and whole levels of complete vulnerability and trust and safety in order to build a relationship that is loving and intentional and flourishing rather than one that's simply just coexisting and surviving, you know?
Yeah, for sure. So it sounds like the main difference was the ability to pay attention to each other, which enabled both of you to be comfortable enough to communicate the things that were really going on rather than checking out of the relationship, so to speak. Yeah. So, you know, a lot of people go through the same things in the relationship where there's a lack of communication and they check out, like we were speaking about, and they tend to focus more on their career when they've checked out of the relationship because they feel like they can control things in their career more. They can communicate better in some cases in their workplace better than they can at home. So they immerse themselves in their career because of that. So once doing that, it starts to create a gap between their professional life and their personal life where they don't really have a connection with their personal intimacy anymore. So, in your opinion, when someone has focused so heavily on their career and a gap has been created in their intimate life, how can they start to bridge that gap again in order to feel their intimacy once again?
Yeah, I think what's really important there is to realize that those patterns you have in relationships will start to snowball out into other relationships. So, for those that feel that they're getting better, they're better at communication in their workplace or their relationships are better there, eventually the same patterns will continue to repeat in other avenues of their lives. So I think the initial starting point with all of this is being able to have a self-awareness of what these patterns are and how they're showing up in your life and how that is impacting your intimacy. And for those that are, growing apart because their priorities are being placed in different areas, it's about understanding that there's a level of investment that needs to be placed in these commitments in order for them to flourish. Okay, so relationships aren't easy in any domain, whether that's organizational, whether it's parenting, whether it's romantic. They all come from a place of needing to be intentional in what you are doing in order to be the best that they can be, right? So I always use the analogy of like a house plant, or people saying the grass is always greener on the other side. Well, it's not. The grass is greener where you water it, right? So whatever avenue of that is in your life, you need to be watering that grass in order for it to grow. Otherwise, it will wilt away. So for those that are looking to reconnect within the relationship, the first step is having that self-awareness. And that could be seeking the relationship of a coach or a therapist or some sort of helping professional to bring awareness to that situation. If those people already have that level of self-awareness, that's amazing. Like, start utilizing what you know and start bringing more intentionality in your relationships. So it's those small things that bringing things back and really leveraging that communication, really focusing on how you're communicating with your partner, recognizing those communication patterns, recognizing those relationship patterns that maybe you've brought up from your childhood, from your family systems. It's all systemic. It all happens in loads of different environments. But I think looking into sort of positive psychology principles and how you can apply those in your relationships, just those everyday practices, things like strengths-based gratitude or savoring or appreciation, or having mindful conversations and showing self-compassion when things don't necessarily go right. I think there's also a piece around the distance that's been created. It's going to take time to bring it back together. So it's also about managing those expectations that you have within your relationship, that not everything may be fixed automatically overnight. And I think what's really important, and I'm just in the middle of writing a webinar on this at the moment, is positive communication is amazing and it's great, but also recognizing when communication patterns or relational patterns are abusive, and having an awareness of those too, and knowing how to manage boundaries, or knowing that sometimes it might be the best option and the safest option for you to part ways, or to, do what needs to be done to get a safe distance away from that. So there's a balance of what's in my control that I can do, and how can I leverage positivity and positive communication to make better, more flourishing relationships, and how can I actually balance that with knowing that perhaps this relationship actually isn't safe for my emotional, physical well-being anymore. And then working with that. It's like figuring out why that distance has been created in the first place, right? And then trying to bring it back together again.
Excellent. Yeah, speaking about like watering a plant, some people feel like they've put a lot of energy and effort into their relationship, where like, so to speak, they've watered the plant of their partner, right? But their partner is not absorbing the nutrition that they're trying to give them, right? So like, the relationship has like broken down because of this, and they don't want to go into another relationship and have to put all that effort into one person again. So they start looking at different like relationship dynamics, and start looking at things like monogamy versus non-monogamy, to see if there's anything different for them out there that would be more worthwhile to their investment of like energy and things like that. So in that context, what is your viewpoint on monogamy versus non-monogamy?
For me, I'm a very inclusive coach. So I am very much whatever relationship dynamic works for that couple, throuple, polycule, whatever happens. It's about knowing what is right for those people. There are certain ethical scenarios where it wouldn't be the right thing for that person. And again, like this all comes down to how you're communicating. The benefits of having like a non-monogamous relationship is that it does force communication, because you have so many extra challenges with those relationships that could arise if your communication isn't quite right. Okay, so when you're looking at the dynamics of a polycule, for example, it's not just about time management and who you're seeing when and how you're scheduling calendars. You're looking at the emotions of 2, 3, 4, 7, however many different people that are involved in that polycule. And it's also navigating emotional resources to lots of different people and meeting lots of different people's needs all at the same time. And it's actually something that I'm looking at the moment in how are we able to foster communication and emotional resources in those relationships when some of the partners in those relationships may actually be experiencing emotional neglect because of potential time resources being strained or emotional resources being strained, or someone's needs can't be met 100% in one scenario, and how you're compromising and navigating conflict when there's multiple parties involved. I wouldn't say it's my area of expertise. I would say I'm inclusive, so I'm affirming of all relationship dynamics. However, it's much more complicated. And for those that are looking to seek relationship help with that dynamic, certainly go for someone that's certified and knowledgeable in that area, because typical like couples coaching doesn't apply. It doesn't directly transfer over into navigating multiple relationship dynamics, for sure.
Right, right, right. Some people that are interested in opening up their relationship, but like they're in a monogamous relationship and they're worried about how to communicate this to their partner, because at times when people communicate this, their partner starts to think that there's something missing in their relationship, and that is why it's been brought up. Do you think there's any truth to this? Do you think there's anything missing in a relationship when somebody wants to open it up? And in your opinion, how can someone communicate this type of scenario to their partner if they would like to open up their relationship?
I think the answer there, Kayo, is yes and no. I think there's two different answers, right? Because um, my question would be, why are you looking to open up your relationship? That would be my very first fundamental question to a couple. Are you doing this because you feel something is missing, or are you trying to add value? They sound like the same thing. Do you feel like something is missing is not the right reason to necessarily pursue that level of relationship with, or bring other people in, because you haven't got, it's a really tricky question to answer, because there are so many different thought patterns and theories on it, where it gets a bit muddied waters, and lots of people will have very different opinions on it. I think that for some, if you're just looking to spice up your relationship in maybe an ethically non-monogamous relationship, that can work for some and not for others. It can open up a whole can of worms with jealousy and insecurities that people didn't know that they had. And again, that requires a level of communication pre-existing and foundational in that relationship, because once you start bringing in other people and those insecurities and jealousies are there and you're not communicating about them, that's ultimately going to create distance, as you were mentioning before. Whereas some people might be completely secure and they've got all the fundamentals there in place and they're just looking to explore something new together. And I think that might be the difference there, is that it needs to be something that you're looking to pursue together, in my opinion, rather than something that you're looking to pursue because one person feels like they're missing something.
Yeah, yeah.
So your second question was for people looking to pursue that, how could they communicate that with their partner? I think making sure you've got all those fundamentals in place first, and then suggesting a time when everyone's calm and relaxed and everything's going really well, just to sit down and broach that conversation from a really values-based place. So recognizing and empathizing with each other and co-regulating in order to have a conversation that could potentially lead to a huge conflict. But hopefully, if you're both coming or singing from the same hymn sheet, so to speak, it should be a conversation that you can navigate quite well, as long as you have those fundamentals of communication in place, if that makes sense. I think that's the most
Yeah,
important
yeah, for
thing.
sure. I would definitely say it is down to the level of connection between the two partners before they
Yeah.
can have that kind of a communication about that kind of a topic. Yeah, so you mentioned jealousy, like, speaking about jealousy, it can arise in non-monogamy and monogamy in different ways. Like in non-monogamy, it could be like, oh, you're spending more time with this other partner than me and things like that. And in monogamy, it could be like, oh, I noticed that you're always looking at this person or talking to that person, to the point that the person that's been accused of these things starts to feel like, why am I always being accused of these things? And they would like to communicate to their partner that there's nothing to be jealous about. So, in your opinion, how could the person that's always feeling these jealous emotions start to deal with this jealousy? And how could the partner that's been accused of things better communicate that there's nothing to be jealous about?
Yeah, I think the first question, the first word that instantly comes to my mind is curiosity. I think in these situations, when there is like high levels of any emotion, whether that's jealousy or other, there always tends to be these patterns of communication that come in where there might be defensiveness or blame, or people shut down or start stonewalling, or they do all these different things to try and completely shut down that conversation to avoid being uncomfortable in that situation. For someone that's looking to overcome their challenges with jealousy, I think it's really important they understand what their insecurity is behind that, because jealousy will come from a fear or insecurity of some point. And for the partner that's facing that challenge with that person, again, it's about being curious and for them both becoming more self-aware of what is triggering these problems. And I think that's potentially the realm more of the therapist than a coach, because they will go back and they will look back at family systems and they will look back at previous traumas that may have started these insecurities and these fears in the first place. It doesn't mean that there's not a role for coaching in that situation, but I do feel that it's more of a therapeutic realm to be able to look at the trigger reasons as to why those things have come about. When it comes to having done that work, when you're looking in a coaching scenario, again, it's just fostering that really curious mindset. Like, what's going on for you right now? What's creating such a high level of emotion? And underpinning all of that, it's going to come down to, what do you really value? What is really important to you? And how can these needs be met potentially in a different way that's not so destructive to our relationship? So, say, for example, it could be that, the jealous partner just really needs a slightly more responsive partner. They may just need like, oh, hey, if you could just text me back within a certain time frame rather than waiting 7 hours, it would settle my mind a bit more and I wouldn't ruminate so much. So again, with that curiosity, there can come like some really simple solutions. But then again, you also have the flip side of extreme jealousy, which can manifest in some really, really abusive behaviors. So you also have to be really mindful of that too when you're looking at coming into these conversations. Like, where is this ultimately going to be ending up? Is there going to end up being threatening behavior? Because if so, perhaps coaching isn't quite right here, and perhaps we need to be looking at other avenues. But I think it is just about finding that curious place of, where is this insecurity coming from and how can we work together as a team to overcome this? What do you need right now? And then negotiating on where that can be met, because you can't meet everybody's all their needs all the time. Like, if you've got a jealous partner that needs you to text them 10 times in 1 minute, I've had that controlling relationship, and that's not jealousy, that's control. There needs to be a healthy boundaried level And that is different for every single relationship. So some couples will be highly responsive, because a lot of jealousy comes from, you didn't text me back quick enough, little things like that. But it could be that, you create between you, and it's all co-created, you create between you like something that helps to settle the nerves of the jealous person. When it comes to looking at ethical non-monogamy or polyamory and jealousy, like, it can happen anywhere. Like you were saying, it can happen in monogamous relationship, it can happen in ethically non-monogamous relationships. I think where ethical non-monogamy comes in, and the benefits of that, is a lot of the people in that lifestyle, they have community support. So they have a lot of other people that are going through exactly the same thing, and people in that lifestyle, as well as those in like the kink and BDSM scene, they have much more open dialogue around sex. We have an issue in our society where sex is such a taboo subject that people don't talk about it. And I think that's where a lot of these issues they harbor in these like shadows of people not talking about things that maybe they would benefit from talking about. So you have these other communities, ethically non-monogamous, kink communities, more sexually diverse communities, and they have much more conversations. Some of them, like the BDSM community, they even have their own communication frameworks and educational systems where they educate each other. So they've got all these different elements that helps to communicate easier, and they have the support from other people in the way of community to build each other up, if that makes sense.
Excellent, excellent. Now we can talk a lot about this subject, but we are running short on time. So I do have one more question I want to ask you briefly, and speaking further on like the jealousy, like sometimes there is a good reason for the jealousy because infidelity has happened in a relationship. And once that has happened, it can fracture the trust in a relationship. Some people, when they've had that kind of incident happen where their partner has been unfaithful, they feel like they can never take them back. And some people feel like forgiveness is okay if like they can communicate well. What is your opinion on that? Do you feel like a relationship can ever be rekindled to how it was before after some trust has been broken like that? Or do you feel like they're just going to be tolerating each other from there on?
No, I think in my personal opinion, I think there is definitely a place for rebuilding trust. That might be my naivety in that I've never experienced infidelity. However, from, where my research and listening to other people, Esther Perel talks a lot about infidelity. And I think when trust has been fractured, that might not just be through infidelity, right? That could be through like lots of different means where trust could be broken. And if our relationship just fell apart every time trust was broken, like no one would ever stay in a relationship for longer than 6 months. So I think it's just about gradually building back that trust through positive communication. Again, it comes back to the same thing. It's being able to tell your partner how you're feeling, being really vulnerable in that space, and being comfortable with being uncomfortable, because it is a really uncomfortable topic. And when someone has betrayed your trust in that way, it's going to take time. Again, it's that managing expectations. It's allowing the time for these things to heal. It's meeting each other's needs, and it's being really intentional in your actions and not just expecting forgiveness in 3 months. It's proving that trust can be rebuilt. And then also looking at the reasons why these things happened in the first place. Like in the case of infidelity, they say most people there's research to say that a lot of people that cheat in their relationships are actually really happy. They're just seeking something else that may be missing. And it's about looking at, again, collaboratively, how maybe you could meet whatever that fundamental need is that's caused that person to cheat. How can that be met in other ways?
Excellent,
So
excellent.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, Annabel, thank you so much for coming on. It's been great speaking with you. Where could people find you, find out more about you, and find out more about what you do?
Yeah, for sure. So you can find me on my website, which is www.coequalcoaching.co.uk. People can reach out to me on LinkedIn. So that's Anabel Reddaway. I'm on TikTok and Instagram, and that's at Coequal Coaching again. And I'm always happy for people just to drop me a message and we can have further chats about it.
Excellent, excellent. And for the viewers, all the links to her socials will be in the description, so you can contact Annabelle and find out more about what she does. Once again, Annabelle, thank you so much for coming on. Any final words before?
Lovely. No, no, this was lovely. Thank you, Kayo. It's always nice to speak to other people about something that you're really passionate about.
Excellent. You're very welcome, Annabelle.
Lovely. Thanks very much.
You're welcome.